Hey, what's up, visionaries? Today, I want to talk to you guys about having some sort of strategy when you guys are investing in these cryptocurrency projects. Many of you have maybe sent DMs and questions, comment strategy on my videos, right? And I want to just put a video out and I'm going to explain three things in this video, right? I'm going to explain why you need a strategy, how to make a strategy, and then explain my 3C method strategy that I use to scale from $14,000 to multiple seven figures, right? Now, before I start this, of course, naturally, none of this is financial advice, right? If you are seeking to get properly set up inside of like investing in anything, you need to consult with a qualified financial advising consultant. My specialty is in cryptocurrency consultation and education, right? And what I am doing is explaining my success that I had over the 7 years of investing in cryptocurrency. Now, my strategy and my philosophies are much different than your average person, right? And it's a combination of traditional finance and a lot of just this new digital finance thing that we are going through right now. So for enough of an introduction, my name is Michael James. I started out investing in cryptocurrency early in 2018. I started out with just investing $80 a week in a job that I had working at Sam's Club. I ended up a few years later, I cashed out my 401k, which was at $14,000 because I had just started one working at Sam's Club. And then that was in 2 years that I had did that. And I decided to invest in cryptocurrency. And from that investment, from when I started from $80 a week and having $14,000, I now have a portfolio that is over multiple seven figures, right? And I'm approaching eight figures, right? So now what I want you guys to understand, right, is that how you do anything is how you do everything. And the reason why I say that is because a lot of people get involved in cryptocurrency. They don't take it serious. A lot of people treat this as if it's some kind of casino, it's gambling. A lot of the critics and the cynics also think that many people are doing that. And I agree with that. The reason is the majority of the world is they lack financial literacy, right? And then so one of the things that I think that before when you start your strategy, which is what I do, which is when you go to click on the link that's in the description or whatnot, there's going to be a risk tolerance assessment, right? And now what I did was I utilized what I believe that there's either conservative, moderate, and then aggressive investors, right? And when I say those terms, it doesn't balance out like the way people actually consider conservative, moderate, and aggressive. In cryptocurrency, it's a different beast, right? What I want you to mean by a different beast is that the returns and the risks that you see in the stock market and real estate or whatever it may be is much different than is much different from that of any other asset class. Why? Is because it's very young. The largest asset in cryptocurrency is Bitcoin, which is today around $2.2 trillion, right? And then you look at something like gold and silver, right? And then they have like $20 trillion, 40 trillion. And I'm going to get those numbers wrong, but I'll put it up here on what it is when I edit this video. But what I'm trying to say is that it's young. So because it's young, it doesn't take much money to move these markets, right? This is the risk that you are taking investing in cryptocurrency. This is an emergent asset class, meaning that none of this is proven. We are speculating it, right? And the reason why you got to have a risk tolerance and knowing that if you're conservative, moderate, or aggressive, right? If you do not understand that this is an emergent asset class and it has tons of risk, right? And that you need to understand that with risk, all investing is risky. Everything you do in life is risky, right? And it just depending on how you view whatever it is that you take and what you're going to do, you're always going to take on some risk. All right. So now, with that being said, what I want you guys to understand, right, is now that you understand the risk, and you're either going to be a conservative, a moderate, or an aggressive risk. The reason why I'm saying that it's all risky is because you're being aggressive, right? But when it comes to investing in risky asset classes, right, I like to say like no less than 5% of your net worth. If you're somebody who already has a net worth, right? And there's different levels to this stuff, right? A lot of people need money. And that's what you need to understand, that trying to earn an income on investing is hard. It takes money to make money. And that's what they say. Even my story that I'm sharing with you at the beginning, I took $14,000 out of a 401k, right? Realized that there was a tax penalty, right? So I already started losing. When I cashed out, I took the tax penalty, right? I took the penalty for the early withdrawal, right? And that's how I ended up with $14,000, right? But what I was doing is, at first, when I said that I invested the $80 a week, right? I was taking $40 per paycheck and invested in cryptocurrency. What I did first was realize, by taking that $40, I got to see, with skin in the game, the movement of the market. Now, a lot of people are starting today and they hear the story of multiple seven figures and content creators want you to make all these hooks and things like that, right? But what I want you to understand is that every person, right? If you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a clear goal or direction on what it is that you're investing in, you're going to take L's. Everything you do, you need to have some sort of goal. If you're trying to lose weight, you have to put a goal, target weight that you're trying to hit. And then when you do it, you don't say, I just want to lose 100 pounds. And when you do it, the people who do that, I want to lose 100 pounds, right? They always fail. Why? Because it's very hard to lose 100 pounds. And not only on top of that, when you look at losing 100 pounds, when you lose 5 pounds, that's a win. Now, I'm not going to go too deep into that. I want you to consider this is what I'm talking about. That once you have a plan and a target, right? So that's why you need a strategy. Now, a strategy can be anything. Crypto moves off of narratives, right? Narratives is, for layman's terms, a narrative in cryptocurrency would be like meme coins, right? What is the narrative behind meme coins, right? A lot of people get in early, strong community, right? And you could potentially, and one of the languages is that the reason why I'm not a meme coin person is the whole idea of just having to rely on people as a community in order to make money. That's not sound fundamentals. That's gambling, right? And because meme coins are cryptocurrencies, people think that it's risky and gambling, right? That's why I say the clarity, confidence, and conviction. Clarity, understand what it is that you're investing in, right? I just told you this is an emerging speculative asset class. By speculation, right, I'm talking about no matter how much I like cryptocurrency, I'm speculating whether anyone actually cares about it, right? And then I'm not talking about just because 1, 2, 20, 100,000 people said that they don't like it, 1,000,000 people said they don't like it, because there's 8 billion people in the world. I don't need my uncle, I don't need my sister, my mom, my wife, I don't need anybody to convince me on something until I educate myself on it, right? So that's why you have to read books like The Bitcoin Standard, right? You have to read books by The Price of Tomorrow by Jeff Booth, right? You have to read these books, right? Because you have to gain your knowledge in what you're invested in. Because at the end of the day, the dollars that you're exchanging are yours and yours only, right? You're trying to get yourself rich. You don't need everybody to go along for the ride. Because at the end of the day, when you rest your head, the person who actually is your biggest hater, when you make it, they're going to want to go on the boat. They're going to want you to spend time to educate them on what you know and help them learn at their level. And then they're not even going to want to pay you for it. That's the craziest part, because now your time is more valuable. You invested the time in yourself before no one else did. They spent most of the time ridiculing you. Then they want you to tell them for free. See, the people strike first and ask for compassion second. And once you realize that, you will realize that it's on you to do your own education into these cryptocurrency assets, right? So now, as I was saying, you need to educate yourself to understand the clarity of what you're invested in, right? You need clarity. Well, investing in cryptocurrency. And then so what I did was I started out with Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I still believe in it. The reason why I'm going to approach 8 figures, right? You know why? Because I had clarity 5 years ago. I'm confident because of the money I made 5 years ago. It took 2 years for me to see the real money. I was making money along the way. Money went down. I even lost money. That's part of the game. But also, mind you, I'm only taking $40 out of each paycheck. And you would laugh at what I invest now. You wouldn't laugh. You're like, that's a lot of money. That's crazy. I'm at a different level than I was at the beginning 7 years ago. See, many of you need to just get started and have a strategy and a plan. See, my plan was to make enough money to have an emergency savings fund. So instead of taking $100 or $300 per paycheck and start building an emergency savings, I started reading about investing and how money works and why you need to invest more than you need to have savings, because I learned about debasements of currencies. I learned about inflation and how the purchasing power of the dollar was going down. See, once you realize all these things, while you're holding your money, the greatest risk that people have now is that everything else is getting more expensive. You're not making any more money. You potentially may lose your job to AI, right? And you're trying to now find a way to make some money, right? And then the thing is you're trying to save money in a savings account, but the value of a dollar is decreasing. Yes, it's still called a dollar. It's still cash is king, right? But your cash that you have sitting in your sock drawer or your savings account, right? The amount that you can get with the cash that you have, right? And it's not growing. So what's the good of having $1,000 cash, right? And that you had in a sock drawer holding it for 10 years, right? Because cash is king, right? And you're not adding to it because you can barely survive with your bills. Your pay isn't increasing, right? These are the things that people have to realize. Like, I don't want to get into about social media as a distraction and whatnot, but this is one of the things that I want you to realize is that you have to be able to see that you're drowning. Saving dollars, that's losing purchasing power. The cost of living is too high. The cost of gas, the cost of eggs. But if the cost of eggs is going up, and your dollars are sitting in a sock drawer, losing, like, just let's just say it stays at $1. But now when you started saving that $1,000, it cost you $1 to get a dozen of eggs. This is not true numbers. I'm speculating inflation, right? So then I'm using it as an example in inflation. I'm sorry, right? That now you put $1 worth of eggs, right? Then you had it in there for 2-3 years. Eggs are now $2. You still have $1,000 in the sock drawer, right? So right now, the eggs went up, but you still had $1,000 because it's not gaining interest sitting in your sock drawer. Then your rent just went up. Your emergency savings fund is getting more expensive every year because the cost of living is going up every year. And once you realize that, you need to find a vehicle to park your money in that doesn't get your butt spanked, right? And then you find something that once you realize that the purchasing power of $1 is dropping, you start investing. That is the story of why I was taking $40 a week. And that is the story of my success, because I started investing in something that was outperforming the dollar. I was trying to get more dollars without having to trade my time. That is the first strategy that I had, was that. And once you realize that you're not trying to just trade time for money, and how can you make money work for you? You pick things. So I picked Bitcoin. I picked Ethereum. And then what I did was I educated myself on what is Bitcoin. I learned that Bitcoin is permissionless, borderless, and censorship resistant. I didn't care about who created it. I still don't care. I don't even care who Satoshi Nakamoto is. You know why I don't care? It's because I don't really know who created the dollar. I know what was told to me, but I wasn't there to know it. Somebody's just telling me it. Now imagine 200-300 years from now when they tell the story of Satoshi Nakamoto and then they speculate who it is, right? And that's why I'm saying that many people are trying to get everything right. Instead of understanding that, instead of trying to get everything right, what you need to do is make a decision to understand something that you don't normally. See, I didn't really understand the stock market, right? So I started with something that I was like, all right, I don't really understand the stock market. So let me find something that I can grow with. And I grew with cryptocurrency, right? And, people are naturally haters and skeptics, right? And then social media and these platforms allow for people to say negative stuff to people that they don't even know and understand, right? And me, I'm someone who can take objective criticism, right? Because that's what I did when I first started investing in Bitcoin, right? When I started investing in Bitcoin, I wanted clarity that Bitcoin can do what it said it's supposed to do, right? And a lot of people, they speculate about it's not really truly decentralized, right? And now I'm somebody who understands that it is. What it's not is anonymous. All right. And the reason being, and I'm not going to get too into this, but I'll make a video about why it's not anonymous, right? It's because everything is already tracked. If you go to buy Bitcoin from your home on your home Wi-Fi, the IP address is with a service provider, right? And then the service provider has all your information, your name, your address, and everything. Then most of the time when you're buying Bitcoin, you can use a centralized exchange, right? The centralized exchange does what? It needs KYC, know your customer. It takes your picture, the selfie, driver's license. You link your bank account to it. The bank account has the same information. And then every time, even if you go to Uniswap and use your debit card or credit card in order to buy cryptocurrency, when you go to transfer that back to your Coinbase or whatever wallet you use, all that is traced and tracked, right? Doesn't matter if it's Bitcoin or not. But there's proper ways to use Bitcoin to where you could be a bit more difficult to be anonymous than what it is. And then there's a process, and there's always something they say in cybersecurity that security is a process and not a product, right? Because even the VPN, if you use the same credit card, you're placed in the same position. So now, I know this is a lot of information, but I just want to get this one part through for you guys to understand. So now, when you realize that, what does Bitcoin do? Right? Permissionless, borderless, censorship resistance, right? So now they're permissionless, borderless, and censorship resistant, right? So now when you start realizing things, right, is that more people are trying to understand what does permissionless, borderless, and censorship resistant. Now you may see, if you doom scroll on social media, you may see a lot of people that are always out there speculating who's Satoshi Nakamoto, right? The CIA started it, right? And the CIA, the CIA thing blows my mind, right? Is because you don't think the CIA controls this, like, has links with the central bank, right? Anti-money laundering. You see all this other stuff, right? I don't get why you're speculating something that otherwise can be beneficial for you, right? Let's just say that a Bitcoin is going to go to zero in 3 years from now, right? And then you've been hearing about Bitcoin since 2020, right? 2019, 2018, whenever you started to hear about it, right? And you've been ignoring it and dismissing it. And you take the value, had you took $1,000 in 2018, what would the value be today? And then today, even with 3 years from now, whether Satoshi Nakamoto reveals that he's a Russian psyop spy, or he reveals something else, when will you decide, right, that you can cash out? Right now, you can go on Coinbase, crypto.com. You can go anywhere and sell Bitcoin for cash right now. Anywhere. It doesn't matter if it doesn't have intrinsic value. There's people who find value in it who would buy it, and everything's a market, right? So you got permissionless, borderless, and censorship resistant. I always use the Russia and Ukraine war because both Russia and Ukraine utilizes the network. So now that I know that, one, it's decentralized. You don't need anyone's permission. You don't need the bank. You don't need anyone else. All you need is internet access to utilize the network to send Bitcoin from one person to another, peer-to-peer technology, right? What I did was I got some Bitcoin and I sent it to somebody. They received it. I got what I was looking for, and it worked. It didn't matter whether it was francs, rupees, pounds, lira, whatever. It could be anything, rand, whatever it may be, whatever the currency is, yen. When you're exchanging something peer-to-peer, the value is the perception of the person who is receiving it. Sitting here and missing an opportunity to something that multiplies your dollars back to the purchasing power of the dollar, right? Something that multiplies your dollars that you can sell at any moment that you want for the useless dollars that you want, right? And the more and more you realize that this happens, right, is that when you realize that value is perception, it has no intrinsic value, right? Then see, the intrinsic word is cute. A gold bar, right, doesn't have value to me. I know what someone who knows how to exploit gold for something else does, but do I know how to do it? If someone handed me $100,000 worth of gold, obviously me as an investor, I'm going to keep it and hold it for a little bit, right? But when we're talking about value, right? One, how do I know that gold bar is real? Do I have the Do I have the resources and the tools to prove that when you hand me a gold bar that it is exactly what you say it is? Then you can tell me you can make microchips, computers, and conduct electricity with it. Do I know how to do that? Either way it goes, you have to go to a third party in order to extract that value, right? And then so like when people say intrinsic and then they tell you everything that it can do, but can you? Then when you have to move and go somewhere, right? Drag your gold with you and you go to the pawn shop to sell it, or you go to some jewelry and you got to negotiate the price of it. You see the spot market value of how much you want for it, right? But it's what you're going to get for it, right? How desperate are you for money? Like gold is not an easy medium to exchange. It's not about how much is it worth. You're not going to go and buy groceries shaving off bits of gold from your gold bar. The point of that is that when people talk about value, right, and how much it's worth, why is it measured in dollars, right? And it's like, actually, one Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. See, the dollar part is for you to understand the value. The scarcity of how it only be 21 million tokens. See, all of these things are the reason why you need to start investing in these networks, because we're becoming more natively digital and not less. See, once you realize that the numbers in your bank account are all digital numbers, the bank doesn't have cash. If you go and look up fractional reserve lending and read the book, The Creature from the Jekyll Island, right? Fractional reserve lending is that you go and deposit your cash, your hard-earned money, which most likely many of you get direct deposits, right? You don't get cash, gold bars. You're already operating in a world that's mostly digital. And because you're on the internet and being a hater about investments when you have these zero or negative net worth, you're speculating and criticizing something that you're not. I'm not saying that you got to be this person who's just blindly investing in stuff, right? What I'm trying to tell you right now, right, is that even with the criticism, and once you use your own operational security and discernment, and you realize that everything you have is already digital, you will then understand right then and right now why everything is already digital. So now that you have the clarity on what you're investing in, Bitcoin and Ethereum, and I know what happens to most of you, right? You then get trapped once you made the bait. You like cryptocurrency. You're going to invest in it, right? Someone told you about Dogecoin, XRP, and all this other kind of stuff, right? Start with XRP. I don't care, right? I know a lot of people give me a hard time about not being an XRP Ripple person. I just don't rock with it. Once that case came out and you found out that Brad Garland House and his crew were kind of shady deals, right? It's not just, I don't care about what the reason for the case was. Is that in the paperwork, right? They're corrupt individuals, right? But that's why they want to partner with the central bank. And they're also moving the goalpost on what they were doing. Because the same things, because I've been in it long enough, when I decided to sell, when that case started, I was telling them that stablecoins did what it was doing. That doesn't matter, the Ripple ledger, blah, 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 blah. And then they came out with a stablecoin. But at the time, people were criticizing me that XRP does what stablecoins can't. Then why do you need a stablecoin if XRP does what and then it's like, oh, it works in unison, right? And I was like, yeah, but that wasn't originally advertised. You added that product to it to compete because banks aren't going to use XRP. How do you know? You had to make a different financial product in order to get them to consider it. And even now, you're trying to acquire and establish to be your own bank so you could just get your indoctrinated bag holders to still think that it's relevant, you see? And then so now, once you realize that it doesn't matter what you're invested in, right? You got the clarity and understanding. Now, because I mentioned XRP, price speculation is what ruins most people's portfolio. You begin to start talking about, I want 100X. This Dogecoin story, this guy invested $5,000 and made $3 million, right? The guy held for 5 years. And he was early at a time. Imagine buying something, holding it for 5 years before the tide starts rising. Many of you put it in and stare at your account every day. And the reason why you do that is because you most likely invested something you can't afford to lose. Or, as I like to say, you invested something that you can't allow to mature and perform, right? And then what you do, because you're the expert, because you just started, like a lot of people always like to say things as if they know, or even if you don't understand it, right? Give it some time to perform. The volatility is in the market. You're going to see these pullbacks. That's the whole reason why you're not aping into cryptocurrency with every dime you have. It's because it's senseless to do that in something that is volatile as it is. See, I'm not saying the opposite of it. I'm saying that in the volatility, the upside supersedes the downside. That's why you should invest in cryptocurrency. As long as you can put money, park it, take the pullbacks, right? And then if you have a plan and a strategy to invest more money, then you do it, right? That's what I'm trying to tell you, is that the more and more that you'll realize that the volatility is the strength, you will then understand the best part of investing in cryptocurrency is nothing is going to give you the returns that you're getting in it. And all you have to do, and I'm saying that if I'm going to stand on that business, right, I don't have to ape in my life savings in something that's going to give me the best return without having to go all in. It's like poker, baby. If you can see the river for free, you'll stay in. And then if you hit on the river and you know you're sitting there with four of a kind, or you hit that straight that nobody thinks anybody has, no way someone bet that all the way with that hand. You had 6-7. You had 6-7 or something like 4-7, right? And then you have 5-6. And then you already called somebody with pocket aces, right? And then there was already a king on the board, right? And so to think like, and then I don't, the poker reference, like I know some people are going to speculate on that, so I'm just going to get off of it. But what I'm saying is that if you have 4-7 and then you have king 5-6, right, on the turn, right? And then the odds of somebody having 4-7, and if you already raised at the beginning, is what I'm going to say, is that you just don't go all in. It's just like anything. It's like me, I don't like to gamble, but I like poker because everything's risky and you're gambling. It's a gamble, right? No one to hold them, no one to fold them. But I like the fact that it isn't just like spinning random, land on black and red, blackjack, and things like that. I like Texas Hold'em. But anyhow, once you realize that chasing these 100x, get a bird in hand is worth two in the bush. Bitcoin on average returns 73% annually, right? And that's since its conception. It has been the best performing asset class of all time. The reason why many of you aren't invested and getting involved with this crypto stuff is because you're losing money chasing the fart coins, chasing the PayPays, chasing the next one version of Dogecoin and all this other kind of stuff, when all you got to do is follow what smart money is doing, right? And then what I mean by smart money, I called the institutional investors were coming over 4 years ago. Once I realized what it was going to do, see, right now what they're doing is controlling the narrative for you guys. See, many of you are going to invest in these cryptocurrencies by giving your money to these asset managers, hedge funds, your bank, and someone else is going to take your cash and invest it for you, take their cut with your money, right? Take their cut with your money, charge you a management fee when all you had to do is learn how to do it. And that's what I'm trying to offer to all of you guys, right? Is that join my community, and this is a shameless plug, the Visionary Village. There, I talk about what my 3C method strategy is. I talk about and I explain why these institutional investors are coming, right? Also, you don't have to be exit liquidity. Exit liquidity is people who's always waiting for it to hit all-time high to believe in it. The reason why you don't believe in it is because you don't have clarity and confidence. See method. Get the clarity, get the confidence, have the conviction in order to consistently invest. So that way, when the market goes north, right? See, right now is the time that you need to be investing because there's proven assets that has more upside than the backside. There's no way I believe Bitcoin's going to zero, even if the CIA NSA comes out as Satoshi Nakamoto, right? The network does what it does. Bitcoin is permissionless, borderless, and censorship resistant. Why do you think people are talking about quantum computing? Why do you think people talk about EMPs, electromagnetic pulses? You're coming out with this could stop it, right? It's like saying Derrick Henry, right? If we put 4 linebackers in the box, we can potentially stop Derrick Henry. It still doesn't mean that means Derrick Henry's so good that it requires a catastrophic electromagnetic pulse that not only has to knock out the servers of all internet across the globe for Bitcoin not to work. Just think about how crazy and insane that criticism is. Because it's not like Bitcoin is sitting at the Federal Reserve. Bitcoin is a code. It's math that uses the internet to connect end user to end user, peer to peer. Well, the quantum computing comes, your bank account is screwed. First thing I do before I mess with Bitcoin, we're talking about $2 trillion. If I had a quantum computing and I can crack the bank's code, I can get more than $2 trillion. And I can get it on automatic. I can just rob the poor people with quantum computing, the ones who don't know any operational security about cybersecurity. So now, when I say that, if you're somebody who wants to get involved, I offer mentorship services, right? And what mentorship requires is that what we'll do is first, I'm going to align you and set you up with a portfolio, right? Put your money in, we call it first contact. First contact so you have skin in the game. Then I would tell you how to make your purchases when you're buying on drawbacks, not when we buying on green. We set up how much you want to actually invest, how frequently you're going to invest, and then we put you in projects that have strong narratives. And I didn't want this to be longer than 30 minutes, guys, but if you guys have any questions, be sure to hit like and subscribe. And depending on where you're watching this, hit follow. But also, if you would like to get mentorship or join my free private community, that's going to be free for only the next 15 days. What I want you guys to do is click the link in the description or visit the link in my bio, guys. But as I always said, that we're living in the fourth industrial revolution, baby, and you better get in line.